Hi, you're listening to the Mindset podcast that's spelled with AI, a weekly tech podcast that is shaping what you know and think about AI. My name is David, I'm a tech journalist, and here with me is, as always, Filip, an AI tech executive.
Hey, David, good to see you. You know what we're going to talk today about?
I have an idea, the future.
Yes, we codename it like what you're not ready for. So like a surprising AI predictions for 2025. But before going into that, maybe let me ask you a question. So you're a tech journalist, so I think it's complicated to get you surprised on the things because you're kind of listening to news on a daily basis. But what was your biggest surprise in AI area for 2024?
Okay, this is a tricky question because I wasn't really ready for this. My biggest surprise, honestly, was that Amazon didn't manage to introduce an advanced voice assistant.
Okay.
I was really surprised by that. Because everyone kept talking about it. Google did come up with Gemini Pro. ChatGPT came up with the advanced ChatGPT voice model, and I remember in September I was looking like week to week when will Amazon come up with its new Echo devices and new Alexa. No, nothing. And then just afterwards came the news that it's kind of like still shipping out.
It's very specific. Like you were worried about an assistant. Sounds almost like that would be a good episode about just AI agents. But let's leave that aside. Okay, so let me phrase the question differently. So you said that was a very specific thing which surprised you in 24. What are you worried about? What you're not ready for in AI for 2025?
I'm not ready, and this is coming back to the previous question, how fast it was. I really think the development in 2024 was kind of fast.
But I still wanted more.
And I still wanted more, yeah.
Isn't it a kind of a paradoxical that it's super fast, it's like neck-breaking speed, and you still want more?
It's fast overall, but in specific areas, it's not as fast. I don't know if you understand. How about you?
All right. Well, for me, there are very specific things which I am somewhat worried, but also maybe just these things are under discussed, and that's the main problem for me. So I have several topics which I would like to kind of ping to you, how we think about them today. Because I know that they are very likely to happen, and I see almost nobody talking about it. And that is what is scaring me. This is why I also said this is going to be about what you're not ready for, because I think it's happening, but we're just not discussing it.
Okay, let's dive into it.
All right. Well, the first thing, which is still kind of believable, but I'm going to give you an easy question. So what is the holy grail in hardware of all the AI development? Chips, correct. So, but in last weeks and months, we were only hearing about the shortage of them, right? So everybody wanted to have more. Companies were boasting about like how many 100,000 of them they are deploying them, and so on and so on. So I think one thing which is people are not talking enough, that there is going to be a new set of chips coming in 2025. So NVIDIA is launching a new series. It's 5000 series, which are going to be a substantial thing. Besides that, it might have, again, impact on the stock price of NVIDIA, which I will not comment because we are not giving investment advices here. But it's going to move it one way or another because it will not stay stable, because this is going to major release. And I think it's going to launch an interesting wave of hardware change, because what will happen, those who really want to be on a cutting edge will try to get the new 5 series ones, and then that means that there's be a lot of 4003 series one free to have, because like you probably not be able to combine them. So what I think it will be a secondary market for the chips in 2025, which is going to be pretty wild. So if you're thinking like, I don't know, when your wife's birthday is, you want to kind of give it a new chip, that would be a very good chance to do it.
Probably not the best gift for her, but thanks for the tip. Okay, so chips. Also, another thing I would say is compute power, right? Like
Yep.
nuclear, like we already heard the talk about like nuclear plants, although that's, still years into making, because to build even small nuclear plants, you need several years.
It's true. And it's one of the things which will be a bit of a surprise of 2025 as well. And that's, I think we're going to get into the situation where some countries are on the edge of having blackouts for actually training AI. I'm going to name few. For instance, like Denmark and France. If you look at the share of the electricity that they already have to buy in order to operate just a thing, and you know that there is, like, especially in France, there are companies who have aspirations to run models. Like there's a lot of development centers, there's Mistral, there's a lot of other companies having offices. So they'll need more power. They don't have it. So the question is, what will happen? And what is even more important is that people don't realize, but if you run your own home computer with GPU, it probably consumes anywhere near like 700 or 800 watts just per se. So, and you're not regulating people buying those things, right? So it can easily happen that few 10,000 people in France, it's completely not unthinkable for like tens of millions of people living in France, to few tens of thousands buying them a chip to kind of try AI. Now you multiply the watts, we're going to get into the trouble just by the retail consumption, not even like having a large data centers. So I think that's one of the other topics. And this is why the big companies go all the kind of ridiculous way of saying they won't need to build like nuclear reactors next to the data centers, because they realize it's actually so heavy that they literally cannot rely on a grid, and they need to have their own sources.
Interesting. What's next?
Yeah, so one of the things which is a little bit different on a different continent, and therefore, like we're mostly spend our times in Europe, I do travel to California as well, so I do have some exposure to it, is how different the autonomous vehicles will be in Europe and in the US and in Asia. So now you know about the topic a little bit, you follow the news. So what do you think is going to be the breakthrough in autonomous vehicles coming soon? Like, what would you expect the next step to be?
I would say nowadays it's mostly about regulation, at least the topics. I know that's not the answer that you're looking for, but the answer that comes to my mind, right? Like in order to still train on different roads, different cities, different landscapes, you still have to come and ask for permission.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that it's only like flat cities or cities with wide streets. Okay, San Francisco is in that regard a kind of outlier, but otherwise the rest of the cities in Texas and elsewhere, it's mostly like wide, long, straight roads that this is on. So but this is cars. So I would probably. My tip would be trucks.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we are kind of testimony of how different the thinking is, because when I ask this question when I go to California to see my team and ask the question there, the locals, they're going to say, well, it's going to be taxis. Because that's the way it goes. So, but if you come here in Europe and you ask like, what's the next development in the vehicles, you will not hear taxis. And that is kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? Because like if you think about it, the technology is not geographically limited per se. So if US companies like Waymo can actually operate already a taxis in San Francisco area, I think they do Phoenix and a few more other cities. So what will happen in US will definitely more and more cities will get them, right? So I'm not sure we get all the way to get the New York taxis being replaced by Waymo. But sooner or later, we're going to get there, right? So I think that the next year in the US for 2025 you're going to have more and more cities operating Waymo-like taxis. But nothing is going to happen in Europe. And that's so kind of interesting for me. But there is another dimension to it, which is not very visible. And funny enough, here, Europe shares the same thing as Asia, and it's going to be autonomous buses. I don't know if you got the news, but in Hamburg, in Germany, they do already operate a new route, which is completely autonomous bus. So it's in the city. It's not like a long-term highway bus connection. It's in the city, but it's fully operated by the autonomous vehicles. And this is the interesting dichotomy that I see between the Europe and US. So in US, they leave it to the private companies to run their own vehicles like taxis. In EU, they try to start with, okay, we allow few cases, but it needs to be the centrally controlled ones. So we are not ready to give licenses and like allow legislation-wise to run the autonomous vehicles in Europe. As you rightly said, when I ask you what do you expect, you expect testing, regulation, other things. So that's the joke which runs in US, that like US develops, EU regulates. So that's a little bit of mindset here, right? So it's an interesting, and Asia, funny enough, is more on the kind of a public transport line as well. So as a result, I think if you want to have a self-driving taxi, you will have to go probably US in next year, but you might get an autonomous bus here in Europe, and that's an interesting
I would
difference.
say buses, trucks, that's something that I can see going through the regulation. What would you say, or which country would you say, and I'm not asking which year, but which country would you say will be the first one in EU to test or start testing Waymo?
All right. So there's two things to it. So as you probably know, most of the autonomous vehicles are somewhat electric because you need to control the car fully in order to be able to do that. And it's easier with electric vehicles than with a traditional combustion engine things, because just gearing and everything is a bit more complicated in the combustion engine. So I'm gonna play the question back to you. Which country on the European continent has the most EVs?
Per capita, Norway.
Yeah. Yes. So I would say this is kind of an indication, because they are already in a way that a lot of vehicles could do that if they wanted. And if Tesla will come with release that it is now able to do it, like drive autonomously, there's a lot of them in Norway. So the Norway citizens will push for the government to do something about it, because it would be ridiculous. You own a Tesla which can drive, but your country forbids you to do that, right? So I think this is probably a good proxy. So look into the countries where the EVs are really popular.
Also, Norway is very similar to US in that regard. It's a vast land with few people. So you have like kind of long distances between small communities.
That's true, but where the autonomous vehicles start in the US is not like a Midwest or kind of a Northwest. It's more like a very dense areas of San Francisco. So I don't think so. This is necessarily a helper in the whole thing. But of course, if you want to test it, there's a lot of freeways in Norway where you were unlikely to hit another vehicle.
Interesting fact, in Norway and the whole of Scandinavia, the top speeds are much lower than over here. Okay, so that was autonomous taxis. That was your number 3. So let's go to number 4.
Yes, so I have one thing which is going to a little bit touch your area as well, like a media area. And I'll start with a story. So I went to a marketing conference lately, and I was there kind of being part of a panel of a top marketing agencies of that country where the conference was actually happening. And then there came a question from audience of, hey, what would you do when there's like a fully AI automated marketing agency created? What would you think was the answer?
We will get there first.
Yeah, I wish it was. What they said is we're going to burn their servers. Believe me or not. So that was kind of to my face. So that is just kind of a clear indication that the marketing agency area or kind of domain is not ready for AI automation, but they're just like full head on. And I honestly think that they're already, as we speak probably now, there already do exist a small single person or few person projects which are doing what the marketing or media agency would do already in heavy automated AI based, but they are not significant. My prediction for 2025 is, and what obviously the marketing agency are not ready for, there'll be emerging at least one significant marketing agency area, like having tens of, let's say, hundreds of clients who will do this on a scale, who will be fully AI operated. And then I will see, well, from what I heard, they better insure their servers, because the response that we might get might be kind of trying to stop them down. But this is what I do believe. So how would you feel about it, that the media and marketing agencies become fully AI automated?
I can actually see it. There's a lot of stuff that's already like feeding into what is being produced there and the way it is being produced, and the connection to what is being developed on the market and developed on the scale and quality that you would need it to be developed at. So you still probably need some seasoned, director, designer to steer it the way that it kind of brings you a higher quality than you would see content coming up or coming from like basic users, right? Like, lenses, what kind of shot to pick and stuff like that, storytelling. But basically, I can see a reality where this is done not by a team, but by a person who has like a virtual AI team, and he's or she's directing the machines to do this.
Cool. David, are you using any of the AI tools like ChatGPTs and Claudes?
Yes, several. Yeah.
You do?
Yes.
You don't have to disclose. Are you using any paid versions of those?
Yes, several.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, and what would you say is your share between like using free and paid?
Much more paid.
Much more paid?
Yes.
Okay, lucky you. Because what is going to happen in 2025, there's going to be a substantial change in that. And I remember that OpenAI was publicizing that they have about 300 or 400 million kind of distinct users. I'm quite sure that these are not paying users. And it's, I used to work for a company was doing a freemium model. So I can tell you that a good freemium model usually operates on like a small single digit or even sometimes sub 1% of the share of the paying one. So I would say there's hundreds of millions of people who are using the free tier only, right? Now, we don't really have a good news for them, because what is going to happen in 2025, and it's another thing which probably not many of us are ready to, is that we're going to get to the point where the free tier is going to get smaller and smaller. And maybe you ask why. Why should that happen? Because it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, because you would say that they are still in a phase when we need to acquire new users. They still need to kind of get more people using the service. It's the inference costs are so high. So the actual way to, like, what you're giving away for free is enormous. A lot of people think that when ChatGPT OpenAI raised like billions to operate, that they mainly raise it to train the new models. No, most of their cost is actually to run the existing models and offer a lot of it for free. This is also the reason why they're coming with like $200 pro subscription, because they're getting to the point that they want you to use it, because they know that if you stop using it, it will die and the thing will implode into itself and will kind of cause another AI winter. But the cost of running it is really high. So as a result, the only way to do it is just squeeze the free tier. So this is what I expect to happen. So it's good that you're paying already quite a lot, but I think a lot of users might have. And that's going to open another area. So what do you think is going to replace then the tools?
Sorry, just to go a step back. One of the things I heard, so yeah, I'm there with you. Like free will get squeezed, but one of the things, and this is maybe a PR kind of middle way of getting to the paid one, is that the companies are developing ad products to support it. But I'm not seeing like an effective ad product in chatbots that would make them so much money that they would be able to offer this experience similar to how Google is offering, search for basically for free, and it's mainly ad supported.
Yeah, if you look at what Farrell and similar product gurus have to say, they have an interesting quote whenever the product gets to getting ads, it gets into the trouble, because that means the original idea of the product is kind of running away, and you need to get to the problem of collecting money from the ads to finance it. So what is worse, as you rightly said, I don't believe there is much room for an AI ads, because if you ask ChatGPT hey, give me a code, what kind of ad next to the piece of a code that you ask for would be effective? Coding courses? No, because you learn specific software? No, you can code it then yourself. So I'm finding difficulty to find a good kind of advertising space. That doesn't mean there will be they will still try, but I think that the conversion rates of these ads is going to be probably pretty pathetic, because unless it's going to be something emotional or living on your lifestyle, I find it very unlikely to say that this is going to happen. So I don't believe that the ads are actually the way to save that, and this is why I believe that this free tier needs to be squeezed. Of course, there will be few which will operate, but funny enough, and this is what I kind of was hoping to hear from you, funny enough, I think that it's going to be more people trying to put ads on the open source version of it and generate some money, rather than the paid services trying to deteriorate their experience or their user experience while hooking ads on it.
We'll see. I can see both, happen at the same time. I would be curious how much that conversion rate will, go up or down. Especially in the light of this whole open source coming up and becoming more and more popular, especially with us having mobile phones, notebooks, laptops, computers that actually can operate on device kind of effective language models by now, or definitely by 2025.
Yep.
Okay, so that was your number 5. Free tier is going to be squeezed.
Yes, the next point is going to be super touchy for you.
Okay,
because I know that you're a big fan of the audio assistants and
I am.
and ambient computers. So, what's the biggest fear for you of being a fan and being a heavy audiophile? What's the thing that you're worried about?
I worry about a lot of things.
You do? I'm so sorry for you. Shall I suggest a therapist?
Okay. I'll give you one. Okay, so I'll give you one. So the first time I heard the audio summary podcast version coming from Google's Notebook LM,
yep.
I was kind of wow. This is I cannot distinguish the thing that two well-trained voices are having a conversation about a topic which is kind of drawing me in. It's informational, it's fun, it makes sense, it's kind of lively. So it was well-trained, a good product. Then I saw few months later 11 Labs, this startup, coming up with a version of the same thing for 32 languages, including my native language. And
you're scared a little bit more, right?
I to be honest, I was scared. So this is okay. So I have this mind, right? Wait, I'm scared, but I also see the opportunity. So I was oh, what can you do with this?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's okay, the same thing I can do is someone else can do it, and not ask me to do it.
Yes.
And then I was thinking about, okay, so practical things, right? You can do ads with this very easily. Now I have friends who sustain themselves with voice acting.
Yes.
Is that going to go away? To some extent, I would say yes.
I would say yes. Yes.
Especially you hear radio managers, radio is still, important, right? People listen to it, and managers in radio, they're already like trying to figure out like, okay, how we can save cost on generating many of our ads just with AI.
That brings me to one more question, which is nothing we talked before, so you might be a little bit surprised. So sorry for that. But as I was driving to our recording today, I got an interesting idea in my head. I want to run it with you. Why do you think it's not the case? So, if I remember back when I was listening to a radio still in a car, it was mainly because it was kind of giving the news, giving the traffic situation, and giving a music to kind of feel fine or have some entertainment along the long driving journey. Now, people don't listen to the radio for that reason anymore, and the way why podcasts so got popular is because you never knew what was coming, and you were a little bit at the mercy of what the radio station wanted to kind of bring for you for a topic. So as a result, people may be changing the radio stations if they don't like the music or the talk there. Now, why there is no radio station with just the podcasts? Because with that, you would know exactly what is going to happen. It's going to be a little bit like television, right? So you have a schedule. Why
there is in UK.
There is? How popular it is that I don't know about it.
Not worry. I think in US there is also. So there are, at least I know of two. You have to have like enough programming in the market, and you have to kind of. So it's not as easy as it sounds. Like even radio stations, even if they like big radio stations, if they wanted to just do the whole broadcasting out of their podcast, it still would not be enough. They would have to repeat it the same way. But I think you're a little bit mistaken there in terms of like why people and like what's the attitude of people listening to radio, and still the majority is the same reason as with TV, and that is I don't care, give me something, and like ancient Rome, entertain me, right? So you have like the audience and just like entertain me, and they do care to some extent of the quality and what is coming up. But if you can achieve that quality with whatever tools, they don't really care until the outcome is on the level that they're used to. Okay. So if you can keep the programming at the same kind of quality, more or less, and give the same stuff, there will still be enough people for whom it makes sense to listen to it, because I don't have to, like when I'm choosing or when you're choosing to watch something on a video on demand platform, or you're choosing to listen to a podcast, you're doing like you're doing the cognitive choice. You're like choosing or picking from a list, right?
I don't think so.
But usually people are doing that.
No, I would not agree.
Okay, we have a disagreement. Okay,
yeah,
let's
cool.
let's go.
Yeah, because if you think about like Netflix is killing linear TV, but you don't have to choose. You don't have to click every single piece you're going to watch on Netflix yourself. The algorithm can do it for you. So
you still have to push the button, and actually turns out whatever Netflix puts up as the main title is the most widely watched one.
Okay.
So in that regard, it's like doing the chores for you.
But that's the same thing as the hits were in radio, right? So radio is to some extent deciding what is popular because it's playing so often that you started to like it just because it was so exposed to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, I named this episode like what you're not ready for.
Okay.
So far, maybe the things which we talk about are not that dramatic. Like, okay, new chips, well, you say your wife would not appreciate, so maybe that's not a bad thing either. But I have one point which is really scary, and I'm so surprised nobody is talking about it. And that's like, if you think about it, a lot of the AI experts believe that we are very close to AGI, to artificial general intelligence. And Well, we don't know if it's going to happen in 2025, but if you look at what happens is that we are for sure that Donald Trump is here for next 4 years at least. We're sure that the Chinese president is here at least for next 4 years.
Or longer.
Or longer. Well, let's see how his health is. And we're quite sure that Putin is here for wherever until he decides to go himself, right?
Oh, we suddenly got very political, okay?
Yes. And like if you think about it, like the AGI is most likely to happen in like big countries which have a lot of AI development and have a budgets for that. Now, all these countries are now run by politicians, which are kind of interesting. So would you appreciate for like a Chinese president to be the one who will see the first AGI and decides what happens to it? Would you be happy for the Donald Trump to be the one who kind of gets the first try with AGI and decides what to do about it? Would you be happy that Mr. Putin gets the first chance on kind of a AGI and makes it happen? And this is too scary for me. Because I think that what people don't realize is we are so close to the AGI, but the leaders who are expected to manage it and decide, because I mean, it's very naive to think that if somebody in the US comes with AGI, that the president will like sit and watch and clap his hands. Like we all know that they will take whatever means to make sure that it's steered in a way that he and his kind of government believes in to go. So that is so scary for me that we have these leaders who will definitely would like to kind of have a stake in how it goes and how is it used. And the AGI is very likely to happen in the next years when they are still in power. So how does it feel for you?
Let me turn that back on you with the words of Sam Altman of OpenAI, who recently said, we will get to AGI probably sooner than we think. And then he said 2025, and it will be less impressive than we think.
Oh, so you're betting on this is not going to be big?
No. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, honestly, like, I don't know why Sam Altman downplays the role of the AGI, because maybe he has a much lower standards for AGI, maybe to meet it earlier for himself, which would make a lot of sense. But if AGI is really a tool which gets us to the point where you are kind of doing it better than the humans in many other aspects, if that's the case, then basically the scary part of it is not having a single piece of it, but having like a cluster of it. So if you have somebody who already by first unit can do anything better than any human on the world, and you can have 10,000 of them or 100,000 of them, because then it becomes only a matter of money, right? That's the scary part of it. And again, that brings me to the situation where big countries like US or China or Brazil or Russia can actually afford this to build. So I don't think so that we are really seeing or either Sam Altman is not really sincere with what he has to say, or I think he's like severely underestimating what a combination of many AGI agents can do together. So for me, even though I'm working in an industry and like my work probably step by step helps to get closer to the AGI because we do develop and like use those systems, I feel pretty scared about this one. When I realized that probably it's going to be either Xi Jinping or like Donald Trump deciding to kind of who is going to regulate AI, I got a little bit scared, to be honest.
Me too, definitely. Okay, so that was number 6. What's your prediction number 7?
So it is somewhat related to it, and that is that I think that AGI is our general like artificial intelligence. We don't even have to go all the way to AGI. Is now a domain of private companies. I think that is going to change, and I think we can discuss if the open source Meta kind of tries to open the road for governments to jump in, and I know they try to do that. We can talk about it in some other episode about this. But besides that, I also know that when some company in a jurisdiction of certain country is going to bring with super strong AI, the government needs to decide what is going to do about it, right? And government was always trying to have, like, you can have scientists, but we need to have a better scientist somewhere in a hidden agency to make sure that you cannot outsmart us as a country. So I think we're going to get to the point, and I think 2025 is likely to see first countries doing that, where they're going to have their own sovereign models. So like their own ChatGPTs, llamas, or kind of anthropics, or whatever you're going to call it. And to make the kind of prediction even a bit more specific, what would be the area that you would bet on geographically that is most likely to get that right?
US, probably.
Yeah, so US looks promising because the way that there is a lot of researchers trying to do it. But actually, in the US, to have a statewide LLM, there will be a lot of decision makers to agree to that, because they are a democratic country. So it would have to be voted in a Senate or Congress, a budget for that. Then it will have to be like a certain body or contractually done. So I think it's more likely to happen in the countries where this does not stand in the way. And that's like if you think about the map, where are the countries where can decide quickly about this one, are more where the like autocratic or monarchic governments are still in place. So I would and they have a lot of money as well, because they can't be a poor monarchy, because that needs a lot of money to be invested into that. So in my eyes, the most likely area is Gulf area, so Saudis and similars, because they do have budget for that. And they are very, like, the pyramid of decision is very narrow, so they don't need to, very steep. They don't need to actually have too many people agreeing to that. So if a royal family of Saudi decides that they would like to have a state model, they can. So this is what my expectation is, that the first sovereign AI models, like a countrywide models, will come in. But not to make it just a dry topic. So imagine your whole country has one. What would you expect from the kind of a national AI to happen? What would you think would be the best deployment of it?
In terms of application?
Yes.
Or okay.
What would you like to be used in? So let's say your home country buys or gets or develops an AI model. What would you expect this to be used for?
I already, so for example, if we're talking about Slovakia,
Yep.
There is an example, like years ago, one company that transformed into this AI type of companies nowadays did develop a chatbot for financial services. They called it Taxana. It's kind of outdated nowadays, and I wish it had an AI layer to bring in all those FAQs that are on the website and all those like life situations. So obviously, when you're doing taxes, each year there's some new stuff that you need to count in. If I was able to get that information from a chatbot, that would be splendid.
All right. Well, I have one more point to mention here. Unfortunately, it's not a good one again. So I'm sorry to say, but I mean, we label it like what you're not ready for. So probably it kind of also preconceived. So there's one thing which people don't realize that much, and it is like 2025 will probably the last year where companies who sell software as a service will have a chance. They'll probably need to make a decision. They're going to be like on a fork, on a kind of a crossroads. Because they either going to implement their own AI or they're going to be extinguished by the AI itself. So let me take an example. So you probably noticed that the Salesforce CEO is kind of making a big statements about what the agents will do and how they're going to use it and so on. So he's one of the kind who understands that the threat is coming and they want to be on a survivor side of it. So they would like to incorporate AI into it, right? But there's a lot of services which are on the other side of the road where they think that they can avoid it. And as a result, there will be coming agents or kind of AI tools which are going to replace them. So I would say that if you are working for an AI SaaS company, so AI company or a SaaS company developing a software, you have just about a year to decide like what you're gonna do about it. And that's pretty scary for many people because I know a lot of companies from our country don't even start thinking about it. that this is probably time to go. But by the end of 2025, the AI tools will get in some professions, like let's say accountants and other areas, so good that you're actually existentially threatening of a dedicated software makes sense anymore or not. So that's the other piece, which I think it's around the corner.
I thought that you're going to say that the use of AI in the States is primarily going to be by the army.
Yeah, well, that's a touchy topic. To be honest, I have very little visibility into it. And I think whatever we think is real ×3 is actually the case. But we're just not being informed about it. So I don't want to speculate about it. But it is certainly an area. But maybe, like, we went through several topics. So let me just remind you what the list was. So we had autonomous vehicles kind of going through, right? We had a chip revolution coming again. We have first creative agencies being completely AI. We also had countries having like electricity issues because of the AI trend, as individual people can kind of consume a lot of electricity. We had 3 tiers of AIs being squeezed. We had existing politicians in power trying to regulate. And we have countries having their own models and software dying. So which of this menu is the most scariest for you? Or which would touch your life the most, you think?
Oh, the most. Those are 2 different questions. So
you can answer one by one.
Okay, so scary, definitely the powerful man at power with like authoritarian mindset. And what would touch my life the most out of all of this would probably be, I think, the vehicles, like the transportation.
You like buses? Because this is what you're gonna get here.
Yeah. I'm all for public transport. So this is
cool.
I mean, you live in Germany, I live in Slovakia. I know you travel to US where the public transportation is not,
it's a joke.
State of the art, as they say. Also Asia, the public transportation over there is not great.
Well, it depends. I mean, Singapore is pretty okay.
Overall, okay. If we take like Asia overall, like in Europe overall, it's pretty good.
Yes, I would say so.
US not great. So I would say like this would change a lot, like to better a lot, to a lot of lives.
All right. So your mindset for this is that you're going to be getting more rides by the autonomous vehicles, and you're worried that some powerful man can actually say what you're going to use the AI for.
Yeah. Is there anything we skipped on the list that you are predicting?
I think there would be quite a few points, but I think we had enough of the gloom of the things. So let's wait. I mean, all of these points are also still hypothetical in some sense because it's still predicting the future and we had so many surprising turns. But I would say it's probably important, and this is why I'm glad that our podcast has the kind of a title, trying to shape what you know and think about the AI, because this is exactly like a start of a year is a good time to think about what you want to think about AI, what does it mean for you, and what's the mindset you want to take about that.
Okay, let's hopefully spend a whole year talking about this and other stuff, and let's come back to revisit your predictions in 1 year and see how much you could predict correctly and which ones were kind of, going a different direction.
Yep.
So that's all for this episode. Thank you for listening and watching. And you can, as always, find the Mindset podcast, that's spelled with AI, in your favorite podcast app. Find it on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, join our Discord channel, and you can find all the links to the topics we talk about in the show notes and the description of this episode. So thank you and goodbye.
Yeah, shape your perceptions. Goodbye, David.
Goodbye.